Hey guys, my guests tonight, Paul and Syann Hamden, were abducted by aliens several years ago, and boy do they have a story to tell. See you in about 5 minutes. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust, turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're having a great day. I am so far today, and I see the internet's being as usual. Happy self. Anyway, welcome. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour, and this is California Haunts Radio. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California, and we are 45 strong up and down the state. What does that mean? That means that if you think you might have a paranormal issue going on, whether it's having to do with UAPs or anything like that, or ghosts or whatever you think you might have, we can get to you. It might take us a while because California is a big state, but we can definitely get to you and help you out. How do you find us? Well, we're on Facebook under California Haunts. You can find it under my name on Facebook. You can find us over on Instagram, and I'm going to give you the links to this. So Instagram, I'm Ghosty Gal, all lowercase. You can find us over at Twitter under Cal Haunts. You can find us on TikTok under California Haunts, and that's all lowercase. You can also find us on Twitch. So there's multiple ways to find us. Now, if you're watching from YouTube, which a lot of you do, there's a little ghost in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm getting good at aiming for this thing. There's a little ghost in the bottom right-hand corner with a magnifying glass and a Sherlock Holmes hat on. And that little ghost, if you click on him, a little subscribe button will pop up. And if you haven't already subscribed, it's a good chance to subscribe if you like what you see today, because I have more than 520 videos over there of all varying topics. I'm a journalist, and I don't like to cover straight paranormal stuff. I like to vary it. Like we're going to have a show on psychosis in people coming up here, So I like to vary it. So I'm sure there's something in there that you like. There's a little something in there for everybody, likes. That being said, also, that if you like what you see today, no matter where you're watching from, be sure to hit that like button. And and if you haven't followed me already on Facebook, that'd be a good chance to do that as well. Okay, that was a mouthful. So my guests tonight, I'm going to let them introduce themselves and everything, because you know how I screw names up and I do all that. But they have a very interesting story to tell, and not only about what happened when they were abducted, but there's stuff that they do now that's really, really cool, and we're going to get into talking about that too. So let me bring them in the chat room, and here we go. Good evening.
Hello.
Thank you.
Tell us about you guys.
Okay. where should we start? I'm Syann. This is Paul.
I got the name right. Praise the Buddha.
You did get the name right. Yep. We try and describe these things as accurately as you can, but it's always a bit tricky. We say that we are lifelong contactees of extraterrestrial contact. We're both deep trance mediums. We've worked with spirit people for a very long time. Some people call it natural mediumship. Goodness, what else do we do? I like to paint. Pulls into all sorts of things as well. So yeah.
So we're mediums, and we work with spirits. We've also had a lot of contact with ET.
Yeah.
We teach as well. So, and I'm also what's called a public medium. So I will sit in trance states in public, and often the Zetas will talk to the public as well through myself. So there's a lot to the story. A little bit difficult to sort of condense it all into 30 seconds.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk about your abduction, because if I read your background correctly, you guys met on the ship, or no?
Yeah, that's right. We don't use the word abduction, not anymore. At the beginning of the contact for both of us individually, sometimes it may have felt like that because we didn't understand what was going on. But these days, no longer abduction. It's contact, connection, and relationship.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah, I mean, just like anybody else going through things they don't understand, we fear what we don't understand. It's a natural response.
Okay.
But we did meet on craft very, very long time ago when I was, we've had 2 instances of meeting on craft a long time ago. I was 4 at one stage, around 4 years old, and around 8 to 9 years old the second time. The thing was, so was Paul at that time as well. So, when we first met in person, normally here on Earth, we didn't recognize each other at all because, of course, we're not the same age on this planet, and so you can imagine there's a little bit of confusion there. But they're both very long stories, and are happy to go into them if you like.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm fascinated by the thought that you met twice. That you don't hear that. Plus, being a child, being abducted. What's it? I mean, I've heard a lot of adults. I'm sorry. I'm going to use the word. I'm sorry. The abduction.
That's okay.
Okay. Being a child and being contacted. Okay. What was it like? I mean, because you're looking at it through a child's eyes to do that, because a lot of the stuff you hear is from adults primarily. So this is really fascinating to me.
So for me, my cognizant contact, was when I was 5 years old. I was often taken out of the house at night, taken up onto craft, and it became normal. And when I was dropped back into the front yard after being on craft, I basically would just stand there crying, saying, "Don't leave me here. I don't want to stay. I want to go back home." This went on for years and years. I never felt in any way that I was being abducted. There was one time in my life when I was 28. I woke up to go to work. It was dark. I got dressed in the dark, and it was sort of dim, so I could see what I was doing. I put my shirt on, buttoned it up, and went to walk outside into the kitchen and reached out for the light switch. And I heard a noise behind me, and I turned, and there was this little 2-foot tall alien standing in the corner. I didn't know it was an alien. I thought it was a demon. And it lunged at me and jumped onto my left arm. And I used to work as a labourer, so I was pretty strong, used to shovel concrete. And so I didn't think it was a problem, although I was a bit terrified. Next thing I know, I looked to my right, another being jumped up, so I had one on each arm now. And I thought, well, I've got this. It's not too bad, even though I was pretty scared. And then a third one lunged at me, legs around the neck, hands on the head. I went down screaming into a big heap and blacked out. Woke up in bed and thought, whoa, what a rotten dream that was.
Wow.
And stood up to get dressed and realised I was fully dressed, but my shirt was on backwards. So I realised then that I was having something going on. I had no idea what it was. There was no real internet. Well, there was no internet. There was no way to really research any of this phenomenon. There was no one to talk to. And so I spent many, many years trying to work through that contact. So for me, being on craft as a child was a delight. I used to love meeting all of the other children. I met Syann on craft. I knew all the beings very well. And so when Syann or any child was scared, I used to stand between the Zetas or the beings and the children and get everybody just to be calm.
Yeah.
How did they treat you? Aboard? Because I know, probably, as a kid, I mean, you probably were terrified of what was going on around you. And the second question I have that hooks into that: what do the Zetas look like?
Well, I'll answer the first question. As a child, they understand that the mind of a child is fragile. They understand that the mind of a child is vulnerable, and they did what they do for most children is to protect that mind as much as they possibly can in the contact experiences, and they do that in a variety of different ways. But one way they do that is with screen memory technology, or screen memories as people refer to them. You may have heard a lot of people talk about seeing owls and deer, and then they suddenly see a spaceship. The extraterrestrials, they generally try to use an image that the person finds comfortable or comforting, rather than showing the way that they actually look, which is which would provoke a natural human fear response. And so what they do with children specifically is, before the contact process is even realized, they would have looked in the child's mind for imagery that the child is very comfortable seeing. And then they project that over themselves or as a standalone projection. I don't know the technical aspects of exactly how they do it, but so I never saw them in their true appearance, not till I was much older. I would see, I mean, it sounds really silly when I say it, but, I saw a 6-7 foot tall Easter bunny in my hallway, when they really shouldn't have been there. Many people talk about seeing clowns. Clowns is a very common one.
Deer,
owls, clowns, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, things from the mind. Yeah. We've had a contactee say that they saw Boba Fett from Star Wars, because as a child that they were absolutely immersed in the whole Star Wars landscape, as was I later on, by the way. But for them it was Boba Fett. So it sounds bananas when you talk about it, but then as you become an adult and you start working through it, and the more contact and connection you have with them, you begin to realize why they have done the things that they've done.
We had a situation when I was younger. I was with about 4 other people, and they were all sort of in front of me and able to see behind me, and I was standing in front of them, facing them. And a being materialized about 7.5 to 8 feet high into the house in front of everybody in broad daylight. And everyone stopped talking and was looking past me, terrified. I could see the look on their face. And they said, "Paul, you need to turn around." And as I did, I saw this being Pan standing there crouched in the doorway. And I thought, oh, well, I'm not going to have this. And I walked over to the being and just said, "You're not welcome here." And the being disappeared. It was only years later that we found out that one of the children had probably been reading one of the mythology books, and the extraterrestrials were able to look into the child's mind. And they thought that we as a group would accept them turning up looking like that. So they really don't have much idea in regards to how to turn up. That's why we mentioned Sasquatch before and other entities, because they're only taking imagery out of people's minds. And you can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
I have heard of that from other contactees too. Like a gentleman I interviewed a couple months ago said that he saw his deceased grandmother.
Yeah.
So they're coming in other images. Yeah. That's interesting to me. That's very interesting to me. So when did you discover, I mean, because I've talked with other people who are with MUFON who have said that, that they have like little playrooms for the kids, when the kids are aboard the ships. When did you finally come to realization and see them for what they were?
I always saw them for what they were. They never bothered to use any screen memory technology. They would be walking, around the house. As a child, you don't question this. This is the thing. I would be talking to my mother about, these beings or aliens or whatever. I don't even know where that word aliens came from, because there was no TV. I mean, I'm giving away my age, but from my perspective as a child, because I was brought up with them, I never feared them.
Interesting.
I'm just trying to remember when it was I first saw them. I don't think it was until I was in my mid-30s until I actually saw them in their true appearance.
Yeah.
Much later.
So as you got older, when you were taken aboard, did the stuff like obviously as like you say, as children they're going to have fun stuff for you, so you're not afraid. But as you got older, how did all that change? How did that all that change as far as your visits and what they had you doing?
So I'd be asleep, and they would come and wake me up, and I'd just roll over and go back to sleep. And next thing I know, I'd be walked out to a craft and walk on board. They'd let me walk around, and I'd see different technology. I'd see multiple geometric shapes on the internal skeletal structure of the craft. Often there'd be other beings, like little plant beings that you could talk to. There's technology that you can interact with. So as an adult, I was never taught to fly a craft, but I was allowed to interact with all their technology, and they used to find it interesting, uh, because I'd been, with them since I was a child, that I was able to actually work a lot of the technology as well. I could bring the multidimensional symbols out of the skeletal structure and then combine them to form a function that may be to change the lighting or the temperature within a craft environment.
Hmm, fascinating. And what was the technology like? I mean, obviously you saw the technology, so what was it like? Was it similar to what we have here? Or is it really advanced to what we're using here?
The technology is completely different. So we're moving as humans into this technology. So they use a lot of holographic technologies, and the holographic techs are based around things like, we currently have ocular uh, for three, multidimensional sort of spaces, but they're able to generate that technology into the room, and you can interact with it. That's the first thing. Other technologies are what's called the black box technology, where they're able to place consciousness into those boxes, and in the future, humans will develop that technology that'll be called the singularity. The other type of technology is these light scanning technology, where they can scan a person and work out if how is their consciousness sitting in their cellular form on the table. So, obviously on board, they would teach me a lot of things. I'd be with a lot of other extraterrestrial children being taught a lot of different things about multi-dimensionality, how to walk through portals, how to develop consciousness. And so basically all of the technology that's on board a craft is based around consciousness, because the craft themselves actually are conscious entities.
Here's a question. Now, as you talk about the technologies and stuff, and I've talked about this before on other shows, they're passing that knowledge on to you. So what this tells me is that some of our scientists and maybe some of these people like Gene Roddenberry or even George Lucas, who are creating these fantastic space things, a lot of those ideas came from an alien race.
Absolutely, and I know that they are passing information on, because I was asked to pass on some information to specific people, and I have done that. And that information was based around healing and light and sound technology. So,
Fantastic. And what about the big question is, did you undergo medical exams or anything like that?
I definitely got recall of procedures and examinations. And nothing scary or awful either, I'll add. And it was all done in a very calm and clean, safe and consented environment. And all at my request.
So in the past, when people were taken on board craft, they'd take a plug of skin from the person and have a look at the cellular frequency. What is the vibration? How does it pulse? Yeah. And what they would then do, looking at all the DNA structure, is look at the consciousness of the person aligned with that, and see if in some way it's out of phase or within phase. The problem is when they did the puncture wound in the past,
they're known as scoop marks.
It was a bit painful, and so what they would do is, while they were doing it, they would tell you that you were being shot with an arrow in the leg. That the problem is that some of the screen memory technology wasn't very good in the past, and I somehow was able to move the technology away from my leg, but the blood came out in a straight stick. So I was looking at it, it didn't drip down my leg, it came out. And I realized that what was taking place wasn't actually what was taking place, that it was some sort of technology. But I was only very, very young. And it was only as I got older that I started to realize what was going on. So, yeah.
Did they tell you why they do the medical test at all?
Yeah, for sure. Because as I was describing before, I look at people's consciousness, and this has got to do with psychosis. So they look at people's consciousness and they see if the frequency of the consciousness is resonating with the cellular frequency as well. And if it's not, then what happens is a process that I understand as psychosis, others may understand it differently, occurs within the individual, and often contactees are classed as being unstable. So the extraterrestrials themselves were seeking in the past methods to stabilize consciousness within a human hybrid, and those hybrids were then able to function much more clearly on planet. This planet has a specific frequency called the Schumann frequency, and because of that, when humans and hybrids incarnate onto this planet, they can struggle. And the Zetas were telling us that often psychosis is a method that's used as an energy, and the energy of the psychosis then develops in the person to actually resolve a problem. And the resolution of that means that they come out on the other side of the psychosis a much stronger person.
When you talk about the hybrids, how big is the hybrid program? Because I know you hear stories of almost anybody that's been, the contactee, and they're always forever, getting all these tests and stuff. So is the hybrid program as big as people think it is?
When you say the hybrid program, I dissociate from the hybridization of a race.
Okay.
I don't actually believe that's taken place. I think it's something else. But the actual hybrid program where people are incarnating into human form, I'd say about 30%, if not a little more, of the people on planet are actually of a hybrid nature.
Of consciousness.
Of consciousness, yeah.
Yeah, to distinguish clearly from any biological.
There's actually, because there's no need to mix any DNA from one race with another, because already as a human, all humans move into their physical form as spiritual beings, exist within their physical form, live their lives, and then move on back to wherever they've come from. All of that time they have available to them, all of their spiritual gifts and abilities that they brought with them. There's no reason for any type of DNA mixing, slicing, combining at all to take place, because humans already have the capacity to be very much as advanced beings if they step into that process.
So what stood out to you the most during these things that were happening to you?
So many different things, really. I mean, you're in a completely different environment. I mean, it's nothing like you've experienced on this planet, on this earth, in any building you've ever been in. Like when you're with them and you're fully conscious as a human, you have to be they have to adjust their own environmental settings within their environment in order to support the human. We don't breathe the same oxygen mix as they do. We have a different blood makeup than they do. So they have to adjust their environment to support the human. They do that by a process of compression. And when you're in that compressed environment, everything looks misty or dense and foggy. For a start, everything seems very slow, very, very slow. It's incredibly peaceful, like you're in some incredible meditative state. You're fully aware and cognizant of what's going on around you, but it's like being in a different, well, you are literally in a different place, in a different atmosphere with the beings. That always stood out for me, that the mist in the air, I could never forget that.
The reason is because the Zetas, their oxygenation process is based around what's called hemocyanin, and it's a copper-based blood method, whereas humans use hemoglobin. It's a completely different method, and so of course they need to change the way that a human breathes on craft as well, and that's where the compression comes from.
Yeah, they've given us a lot of information, like sciencey, technical information that's way over my head. I just, play with color on canvas. We've had, one of the main books was written by or co-written by a scientist, and he took the information that the Zetas passed through Paul and created a big old fat book called The Primer of the Zeta Race. We've been giving it away free for nearly 10 years now, and anyone can download it as a PDF document off the website, and it talks about all of it in a fair bit of sciencey detail, if that's the way your mind likes to absorb information.
Now, what do the Zetas look like?
From our perspective, when we see them, there's lots of different. So if there's 63 races to the species, 62 of them are different than the last one. The last one we called the greys and the abductors, and generally those sort of grey-looking beings have the facial protrusion that comes out. With the Zetas, their faces are very, very flat and massive black eyes, but two little holes and a slit. They don't have teeth. They've got this sort of fibrous type process within their mouth rather than teeth. They're very, very graceful, very long arms, 3 fingers. A lot of people have started to see them with 3 fingers and probably a very small thumb. But for us, we've noticed that with a lot of the different races, they all look different. We know the races and how they relate to humans. So just as humans, you may have a job that you perform a function, a race will perform a function. And so races may be an ethical race or a technological race or a biological race.
Yeah, we've tried to name them so we remember who's who. There's so many of them. But they all have a different skin color. Even within one species, they have a full range of color of their skin.
And height.
And height,
Heights.
You've seen them at 2 foot.
Yeah,
right,
2 foot.
Right the way through to
4 foot,
7
5 foot, 7 foot.
Yeah, skins ranged from a
white all the way through to black.
Black. We've seen browns, bronzes, orangey reds. Yeah. It's variable. Olive greens, very variable.
Now, are you still being contacted?
Yeah. They showed themselves a week ago.
Yeah, we had visitors over from overseas, and they wanted to sit with Paul and speak to the Zetas, and which they did on 2 occasions. And on the second occasion, the energy was right in the room, and they showed themselves. They clearly projected a 3D solid image of themselves.
Do you think? Okay, because you were taken when you were young. Do you think that your mediumship abilities came from them, or did you already have your mediumship abilities?
Well, the thing is with any type of contact, what people will notice is that they'll start to see spirits and they'll start to see energies and distortions around themselves. And generally what happens is we call this the phenomenon. If a person allows themselves to grow into the experience of the phenomenon, consciously, you already have all the abilities, but it's your fear or the fear of experiencing the phenomenon that holds people back. I spent many years astral traveling and trying to make contact with them. And over the years, it took a lot of work, but I was able to work through my fear and then, I guess, teach myself to contact them. So we work with spirits more than we would work with extraterrestrials. We see spirits, what's called objective mediumship, and both of us work in what's called physical energy. And so, we've got a lot of stories of contact with spirits and floating heads and all those sorts of things and voices in the house.
Now, Syann, you do some kind of art, right? Some kind of artwork. Can you tell me about that?
Well, that's one of my favorites behind me. I'm not a professionally taught artist. I did archaeology for a career for many decades, but but I always loved to paint, and so a hobby. And what I found is when the extraterrestrials started coming to me in that sitting process, so instead of the spirits coming, I had the extraterrestrials coming instead. They also started working with me when I was painting. And so I would be painting and realizing I wasn't quite all there. I was, like in a daydream, painting in a daydream, if you like. And what I realized was that the energy of the beings was kind of being channeled through me as I painted, and that the paintings that were created, although I had control over the imagery that was being produced to some extent, contained energy, and people would feel this energy when they looked at them or touched the paintings. I had no idea that was going on until people started reacting to them. I've had people just cry in front of my paintings, because of the energy that's within them.
They feel like they're going home.
Yeah, it's a really an incredible phenomena that I never expected to happen. I didn't even know was possible, but it's happened, and so I still work with them to do that for people wanting a connection process, like in their meditation, for instance. They'll take the imagery and they'll meditate with the imagery in their mind, with the painting in front of them, and it kind of acts as an enhancement to their meditation process to help them connect to their own race. So it's a lovely process to be able to do for people.
That art's beautiful. I've been looking at it the whole time. I'm looking in between you guys. Looks like I'm looking at you, but I'm looking,
Yeah.
For some reason it's calling out to me. Okay. I don't mean to like that, but you know what I mean. I think it's beautiful.
Thank you.
So, Paul, you communicate with them regularly, right?
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
And how do you do that?
Well, once I got past the fear of them and the way they looked and the energy, the difference between us and their frequency is it's quite distinct. And so when they come, what happens is initially a lot of people sort of end up being burnt unintentionally. It's as if you've walked towards a craft and you've become burnt or something. And I sat for two to 3 years every day waiting for them, and then they would start coming, and after about 2 minutes they'd leave, and then I'd notice that I was all red down the side of my face. And over a period of years I was able to extend the time that they could come as energy. And when they felt I was ready, it was about 20 minutes, they asked that I bring a group of people to sit around me. And then they started showing themselves through transfiguration to people and talking. Initially, I was very uncomfortable with the process. I didn't know what that had even really meant because I was so young, as a young adult. And but as I got older, I became more comfortable with the process. They then taught me how to contact them clearly using certain breathing techniques rather than trying to sort of use any other technique. And in doing so, I was able to teach Syann that same process, and they speak through her as well now.
So why do they give you this ability, or why do you think they're allowing it?
That's a really good question. I think that everybody has an ability. It's whether you're willing to face yourself. And if you're willing to develop and face your fears and your developmental pathway, it's like shamanic work. Often people will go through 7 years of shadow work. And so with the extraterrestrial contact, not just Zetas, but it would be any race, I would make that assumption, it is only an assumption, that people would have an ability to develop. And we know that when people incarnate, they bring with them all of their symbols that they use as references to knowledge, communication, and power. And those symbols that they bring with them are only released to the person once they start to develop. Their first symbol is then showed to them. They'll see that symbol, and the energy of the symbol will start to disseminate itself through their ability, through their consciousness, and the person may become a healer or a communicator. It doesn't really matter what it is. Once the first symbol's been resolved in the person, the second symbol then manifests. And all these symbols are brought with us as humans from spirit realm and from extraterrestrial races when we incarnate into the physical form. And that way we can use our abilities to support humanity as a species.
Now, do they believe in the spirit realm at all?
They know that it exists. They don't need a spirit realm. They don't need to use a spirit realm. They know that spirit realm exists for the human species, but for themselves, they don't need a spirit realm because they're able to leave their physical bodies and move into consciousness. And because consciousness is infinite and exists in all places, they can move anywhere. So they can move from where they physically are and then leave their physical form and come to this space or this planet or any planet. And then using the matter, the fine matter in the air, they can repopulate their consciousness and show themselves in distortions and forms to the human eye.
But it also means that they can, when their physical body is nearing its sell-by date, they can just populate a new body by their consciousness. They don't need to go to a spirit realm like we do to reincarnate back down.
That's all fascinating. Have they told you anything about the future for Earth?
Yeah. So, interestingly, Ray Kurzweil has talked about the singularity in 2045, and the Zetas have also, many years ago, started to talk about how technology will start to embed itself within humans. We are starting to see now a shift in the AI technologies on planet here. We're also seeing other technologies like nanotechnology being used as well. And so the Zetas have said that in the future, probably about 2030, 2040, there'll be a split in humanity, and there'll be the humans that want to abide by their own abilities, by their own consciousness, by their own gifts, and other people will want to use embedded technology to display those gifts, such as telepathy or communication, healing.
How do you feel about them now? Okay, as a kid, how did it make you feel when you were taken, as opposed to being an adult and being taken?
I used to love being on craft. I mean, as a child, you get given things to do, little tasks. You get to see things and the thing is, as a child, you don't know the difference. You think that everybody is experiencing this. You see the other children on the craft, and you believe that everybody is going through this. And so you can't differentiate between yourself and anyone else. It's only then when you speak to an adult as a child and realize that the adults are saying, well, that's not true, that's just all in your mind, that you start to go, well, I won't tell them what I'm doing because they don't understand anyway. But as an adult, it's a much more cognitive experience.
Yeah, as I said, they definitely protect the mind of most children.
Yeah.
The children I remember being on board with were not in the same place as you were in terms of how comfortable they were with what was going on. Although, it was all absolutely fine and everyone was being very well cared for. I was frightened, on a few occasions, just because I was in a different environment. I had no idea where I was, even though nothing was happening that was, not nice. But I didn't recall. That was for me. That was hidden behind the screen memory. So I'd have conscious recall of certain elements of it, like seeing the rabbits or the deer. But I wouldn't. get to understand what had actually taken place until I was an adult. So it was like the screen memories just dropped, and you suddenly relived the entire experience, like your mind had been on pause for all those years. Very interesting. But although I do remember the rabbits, I remember them from at the time. But it's like your mind has been told to accept that it's completely normal, even though it's really not normal.
Right.
Seeing 7-foot rabbits in your hallway. At that point, at that age, for me, it was like, yeah, this is completely normal. I was so comfortable.
But they do that now with adults.
Yeah, they do. They do it with adults.
An adult may look out the window and see a deer
just see the
standing
deer.
there, but there are no deer in that area. But it'll be absolutely normal for you to believe that you're seeing a deer, but it's not a deer.
A classic one is, it's raining.
Yeah.
You look outside and you think it's pouring with rain, and it's really not pouring with rain at all. They're just doing something to distract your mind.
I find, like I said, I find this tremendously fascinating. I think I've been taken. I'm not positive. I had a major lost time thing happen to me on the freeway once, so I suspect I've been taken. But I've never been regressed or anything like that to find out, whether or not it's true. That's why listening to stories like yours, I'm just totally, drawn into it.
Missing time is really interesting. We've actually had a wonderful display of missing time ourselves. We had an afternoon nap and we woke up and the clock said 3 o'clock, I believe.
Oh, something like 2 minutes past.
2 minutes past 3, and we got up and went and watched TV and everything, and went back, and I actually checked the clock at least 3 or 4 times just to make sure that the clock was telling me the right time, and I don't normally do that. And then both Syann and I walked back in and looked at the clock an hour later, and it was now 2 minutes past 3.
Yeah.
So we'd lost an hour.
Well, it's like we gained an hour.
Well, we gained an hour of time.
And then we lost it.
And then we lost it. It was very strange, and we asked the Zetas why it happened. They said that we had both never had a missing time incident, but they wanted us to experience what it would be like, but to remember that you'd had missing time.
Yeah, or to recall the time imbalance or the time difference. Yeah,
very strange.
That's my next question: is what is time like for them as opposed to time for us?
Yeah, time for them is different. So they see time as organic and elastic. They see time as something that you can mold and change. That when 1 second goes past for you, 10 seconds may go past for them. So I'm standing here, I look up, I see a craft, and within that 1 second, next thing it's over there and it's gone, whatever, thousands of kilometers. But for them, because they're able to manipulate space-time compression, for them 10, 20 seconds could have gone past. So they did travel across to that space. But for us, because we're in a different space-time process, we just see it as them moving from one place to another or shifting in different, patterns, this sort of thing. They definitely don't understand time the way that a human would. They see that we experience time in a very limited fashion. And the way that they showed it to me, have you ever seen a plasma ball? They've got gas in them, and when you turn them on, little tendrils of light come out.
Yes.
They said, if you imagine that you're the person in the middle and all the tendrils that come out of it into the globe are each of the timelines you exist on, then that's actually you living what's called an asynchronous environment, and that you're existing at all times, all spaces on infinite timelines. And when I started to explain it that way, I was able to understand how timelines work.
When you would go aboard, like you said, they would show you their technology. Like you said, you didn't get to fly or anything, but as you said, you were playing with some of the stuff. What did some of that stuff do that you were playing with?
They showed me what looked like a this is crazy that when I say this doorway was just like a normal door, but it was undulating and buckling in and out, and it was made of colour, and so it had streams of colour that would run down. And they would try to convince me that I could step into it. But even as a child, because I would look through but I wouldn't stick my head in, I never would. So they would bring in a small child my height that was actually an extraterrestrial, and the little child would step through the doorway and then come back. But they couldn't convince me ever to step through. They were trying to teach me about multidimensionality, to stepping from one space to another. I got to play with the doorway a fair bit, but I was never actually game, because it was a very interesting thing to look at. It looked like the colour was water, and it would run down the door, but it was all electric blues and reds and yellows. And so I would spend a lot of time just watching it, I guess you would like the old lava lamps, you sit there and watch them sort of move all up and down. I guess it's more about the things that you do on craft are more about communication from their perspective. Mm-hmm. You may walk over to one of the windows that are in a craft, and they don't have windows like we see them, but you're able to see through the side of a craft, and you'll see this planet, but from a long way away, and you're able to observe the planet as it rotates. You're able to see different planets. So the technology means that you're allowed to look through a window, or the technology means that you're allowed to activate a certain type of technology that could be to do with stepping through portals. It's got nothing really to do with Earth toys.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you say to people that are currently being taken, to help calm them down a little bit?
Yeah. I say to people, and so Syann and I spend a lot of time talking to people that are being contacted or they believe taken. It's a very, very confusing time for them, and there's a lot to it. Initially, they'll just have an inkling that something's going on. They may try to work through some of the issues, but there's so many levels of screen memory technologies, it's very hard to do that. We spend time mentoring a lot of different people and sorting through their contact. We do a process called understanding your contact. And so we say to those people, you've been having contact for a long time, but you've never been able to work out what's going on. But there is something going on, and it actually makes sense on some level to you, but you may not be willing to accept that at this point in time. And so it's about working through each of their individual experiences. What is taking place? Where is your missing time? What are your screen memories? How big is the narrative that you've been given around what you've experienced? An example would be when some people step onto a craft, they see glass tubes, or they're handed a baby to hold, or they're shown how to drive a craft. These are just narratives that the extraterrestrials give humans to keep the human mind amused. And so if a person's experiencing that they're part of a program, or that they have a mission or something, then of course we need to look behind that. And how do we do that? Is through talking with people, letting them give their experience, in a safe space, because a lot of people feel that they can't talk to anybody because they'll be judged for what they're saying. Yep. But you need to be able to know that you can talk to somebody and they're not going to look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah. I think we're in a very different place now than where we were even 2 years ago with being able to sort of discuss matters of extraterrestrial contact and all that's associated with it. Take it back 20 years and you could hardly say a word. Take it back 60 years and you'd likely just be locked up. So it's we're finding that more and more people are coming forward, especially older generation people who have spent their entire life keeping it all to themselves, never understanding what was going on or what may still be going on. and just relieved that they can actually share these experiences now and not be absolutely ridiculed for it.
And we get a lot of people that say, prove to me that this exists. Well, firstly, this is a very large area, and if a person's asking us to prove to them that their experience exists, we're not going to do that. It's up to a person to work out for themselves what's going on, but with a little bit of support. I think that the extraterrestrial contact process and narrative is highly complex. If it was easy, I think that people would already understand it. But because the phenomenon that's associated with extraterrestrials is so powerful in regards to the distortions of fabric and energy, the astral realm, the servitors or the images that are seen in astral, the spirit people that are associated with the phenomenon as well that come from spirit realm, I think that it takes a long time for people to get to a point where they have some of the pieces of the puzzle that they're able to put together to create an accurate picture.
So what's next for you guys?
Wow. Okay. Well, we've got a few things going on, and one of them is that we could be going to the States next year.
Yeah. Plans are in progress for a visit over to demonstrate and run workshops and teach the various methods of contact, like heterodyning that Paul does.
So there's a few things, and we often talk at UFO. What are they called? Conferences?
Conferences, yes. We've got one coming up in Sydney later on this year. We've got one more local to us where we are. That's in a few months' time. But generally, our days are spent with talking with people and sort of helping them through their experiences, regardless of whether they're extraterrestrial or spirit based.
And a lot of people read the books that are free. There's two of them that are free, and that brings up a lot of different questions for them as well. So we answer a lot of emails from people.
Cool. And how can people contact you?
All the information is on our website, zetaconnection.com. If people go there, they can find the books that we've talked about. They can find our email address. They can subscribe to a newsletter that we try to send out once
every week
as well.
And to YouTube.
We have the YouTube channel where I think we've got over 50 videos now of containing information about extraterrestrial contact, Q&A with people, that we do point people to have a good look at, because it answers so many questions for a lot of people. They can get a lot of answers there.
Great. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate it. I learned so much tonight.
Thank you as well. We've enjoyed it.
I'd like to get you on, later on down the line, talk more to you, because, there's so much more we could talk about. 1 hour just isn't enough to cover it,
That's right.
Yeah, we'd love to come back.
And we've got all of our spirit stories as well.
We haven't even touched
which we haven't even
got there yet. So let's do that. Let's plan on that. But thank you so much, and I'll be in touch to set you guys up again, okay?
Thank you very much.
Take care.
All right, you have a good one.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, I learned so much from them, and I do hope they do come back on, because there's it's not just about the alien encounters they've had. It's about other stuff that they're doing and the work they're doing out in the community to help people, like they were talking, to help people learn about these encounters that you may be having, I may be having, things like that. Plus their work that they do as mediums. Okay, anyway, tomorrow we're back on the air at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, and I'm looking forward to our guest tomorrow. Again, if you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We are equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. And again, if you haven't done so already and you are watching on the YouTube page, shoot me a like, show me some love, show me some love and subscribe. If you haven't done that, same thing with Facebook and all those. But anyway, I will see you tomorrow, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening. And let me get this queued up, push my buttons, and I'll see you.